All right. Okay, today we are going to be talking about some cultural differences. So let's take a look at, we're going to use this PowerPoint to go through talking about some cultural differences and then also looking at a little bit of vocabulary. So let's take a look at some pictures first. So as we go through these pictures, I want you to be thinking about the culture of your home country and then also the culture of America that you have experienced since you moved here. So the first picture talks about dealing with problems. So the blue side has people directly confronting the problem, going straight through it, and then the other is going around the problem, trying to avoid it. So think about which of these do you think best illustrates the culture of your home country, the red or the blue, or is it a mix, or is it something different? And then which of these do you think best illustrates the culture that you've experienced here in America? Okay, now let's take a look at the next one. So if we're talking about expressing your opinion, do you think which of these is most like your home culture? And which of these is most like American culture, do you think? Right? Let's take a look at the next one. We have a couple of these, as you can see. So if you're talking about waiting, do people usually wait in some sort of line, or do people usually wait in a group? What do you think about your home culture? And what do you think about American culture? All right, let's look at the next one. If you're thinking about in a job, so if you're at work, is the boss at the same level with the same level of importance as other employees? Or is the boss more important, more powerful than their employees? Which one best describes your home culture? And which one do you think best describes American culture that you have experienced so far? All right, let's look at the next one. This one is talking about restaurants, so how people act in public. This one is talking specifically about the noise in restaurants. So, is it usually quiet in restaurants or is it usually loud in restaurants? In your home culture? And then thinking about American culture. And for some of these, it might depend on the situation. Some restaurants, it might be loud, some restaurants, it might be quiet. So it really depends on where you are and then the culture of the area. I know when I lived in China, restaurants were much louder than I was used to here in Kentucky. But being in a loud restaurant meant that it was a good restaurant. It meant that there were a lot of people there and that the food was good. So being in a loud restaurant, even though it was different than what I was used to, it meant that you were in a good restaurant. And the last one we're going to look at is talking about individualism. So if you are, the blue picture talks about the individual is very important. And then the second picture, the individual is not as important. It might be the group is more important. So which of these do you think best describes your home culture? And then which of these do you think best describes American culture as you have experienced? Okay. neither of these, all of these may easily describe your home culture, or they might be a little bit different. There might be another version that you think better describes the way that things operate. So this is just a way to look at it and to see some of the differences that we have in cultures around the world. Now, let's take a look at a little bit of vocabulary. So the first one is talking about the word culture. So when we think about culture, we're talking about the customs, arts, language, values, beliefs, achievements, and products of a people group. So there can be different cultures even within the same country. So American culture is not the same everywhere. In other parts of the country, people act differently than in Kentucky. They speak a little bit differently than we do here in Kentucky. So culture can vary depending on where you are. So if we're looking at this definition, let's look at this word customs. So customs talk about how we act, how you behave, either in public or in private. So your customs are like the example of the restaurant, how loud it is in restaurants, or the example of waiting in line or in a group. That would be more the customs of a culture. So think about your home culture. What are some customs of your home culture? Good. Good. And then the next one I want to look at is language. So language is a huge part of culture. Your first language and your home culture reflect each other. So language is a big piece of culture. The more you are able to speak the language, the better you're able to understand that culture. And as you are learning English, you are also learning more and more about English speaking culture. So American culture and British culture, Australian culture, wherever you are learning English, you are learning about that culture. And it's also important to remember that language is affected by culture. So when you are translating from your first language into English and English into your first language, remember that even though words can translate, they might mean something a little bit different because of the culture that they come from. All right, let's take a look at the next word. Oh, our next word is individualistic. Individualistic. So let's break it down a little bit. It means that you're focusing on the individual person. So this one is talking about this picture, where in an individualistic, like in the blue picture, the individual is very important. So if we look at the word itself, we see it has the word individual, meaning one person. And then this IC at the end tells us that it's an adjective. So repeat after me. Individual, individualist, individualistic. All right, one more time. Individual, individualist, individualistic. Good. So in individualistic cultures, there's more of a focus on individual people. Then if we look at a different type, we can look at collective. So the opposite of individualistic is going to be a collective culture. So if we go back to this picture, the individualistic culture, the individual person, is very big and very important. Whereas in a collective culture, the person is smaller. It's more of a focus on the group as opposed to focus on one person. So if you're thinking about your home culture, is your home culture more collective or more individualistic? Is there more of a focus on the individual or more of a focus on the group? Now we're going to talk a little bit about communication. So just like language is an important part of culture, the way that we speak language or the way that we communicate also has to do with the culture. So the first word we're going to look at is direct. So direct, if we're talking about communication, means it is straight to the point. So straight is like a line. It's straight to the point. So if we look at one of our pictures from earlier, this blue picture would be describing direct communication because it's one straight line from point A to point B. It is straight to the point. Then the opposite of direct is indirect. So it is not straight to the point. So if we go back to our pictures, this red picture would be considered indirect, where you're not necessarily just saying, this is what I'm talking about. You might talk about something else that relates to it. So one example, if you came into the classroom and I said, please open the window, that would be direct communication. I want the window open, and so I say, please open the window. Whereas if I was a indirect communicative speaker, then I might say, oh, it's really cold in here. And I might not say open the window, but what I mean is open the window. So direct communication is straight to the point, whereas indirect communication is not straight to the point. Think about your home culture. Is your home culture's communication more direct or more indirect? And the last thing we're going to talk about today is the word stereotype. Repeat after me, stereotype. So a stereotype is a widely held, which means lots of people believe it, oversimplified idea of a type of person. So if we look at this word oversimplified, we see it has the word or the root of the word simple in it, and then oversimplified means it is too simple. So if you think about a group of people or a type of person, there are lots of different characteristics. It's very complex. And so a stereotype oversimplifies that group of people. A lot of times we will talk about stereotypes when we talk about people from different countries or from different cultures that we do not know well. So an example of a stereotype might be that people from China are good at math. So it is oversimplified because there are lots of people in China, and some of them are good at math and some of them are not good at math. But it has been reduced to one characteristic that describes a whole type of person. So I want you to be thinking a little bit, what are some examples of stereotypes that you know of? It could be stereotypes about Americans. It could be stereotypes about other groups. It could be about other countries. And generally, do you think stereotypes are a positive thing or a negative thing? Usually we think of stereotypes as a negative thing because they are oversimplified. There is not one way to describe an entire group of people, and so we have to learn to recognize what is a stereotype that we believe, and then learn more about that group of people so that we aren't just stereotyping what they think or what we think that group of people is like. All right, that is today talking about cultural differences. I am going to send you a list of questions to answer. And then on Wednesday, if you're able to come to class, we will be we'll be discussing those questions. So I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon.